So not that course that UNILAG is doing on terrorism studies won't be sufficient.
I don't think. No. You see, terrorism is one thing. Boko Haram in particular is a different thing.
Because I remember when some years ago when Channels, I think specifically about 3 years ago, Channels had the Channels Forum on Security. We had Mr. Delhat, who was a former DSS staff. He came, and we had to look at the similarities between Boko Haram and the Metasine then in Nigeria. And from what he read out, amounts to some form of studies. So I'm hoping that some others like him are out there that have been carrying out studies, maybe even in the present
we're talking about a
security
federal
apparatus.
government-funded research. That's an individual that has taken time and trouble to research into Boko Haram. But I'm talking about a federal government-funded research.
How can such research help us? Because if we start now, because this is an emergency, so to speak, and if you're calling for or maybe people to be locked up somewhere or go all out and carry out some kind of research, that means we're likely to live with this for some years.
Number one, it's very unlikely that Boko Haram will be defeated militarily. No. No insurgency is ever defeated militarily. You must have some form of negotiation at the end of the day. Now, studying Boko Haram insurgency or having researching into it will help us even understand future insurgencies. Like rightly said, that when Mr. Hart was with you, and he compared the Metasine insurgency with the Boko Haram because he had the knowledge of one and compared to the other. And in any event, no knowledge is wasted. Now, all I'm saying is that you cannot address an insurgency if you don't even understand their mindset, the way they operate, when they are going to strike. It's just some of the suggestions we are bringing forward to government.
Well, you have given extensive recommendations, Sarah Chamberlain. You've given extensive recommendations to the federal government, I believe, is who you're making recommendations to. Do you see any role for the state governments that have been affected by this crisis?
Absolutely. You see, and this is why it's so sad that the attitude of the federal government to the state governments, especially the frontline states, is over-defensive. You see, it is the frontline states, notably Yobe, Borno, and Adamawa, that bear the brunt of the Boko Haram insurgency. They are the victims, and they are also going to be the beneficiary if peace is returned. Yes, a few of them have spoken out of frustration and said that the federal government might be trying, but it is not doing enough. But what has been the response of government in this? The government has either threatened to remove them, the governors, or there have been verbal attacks on them from overzealous officials. Now, there's no way you can achieve a resolution of this insurgency without the active cooperation of the state governments. They are the ones on the ground. They are the ones whose economy is being affected. I was reading the papers yesterday that some of this, do you know that some of the state governments are losing hundreds of millions of naira every month, which is being deducted directly from their allocation to fund the response to Boko Haram. They are the ones that have their markets shut. They are the ones that are losing their pupils. They are the ones that have widows. They are the ones that are dealing with displaced persons. So there's no way you can go ahead without without consulting them and getting their input.
What's the role you see for them?
The role I see for them is that there must be consultation between the federal government and them. See, they're the stakeholders. They are the ones that they live and they understand their territory better than anybody. But a situation whereby you ignore them, you ignore their views, you ignore their concerns, it will be like an operation being successful and the patient dying.
Is that what is happening now?
That's what is happening now.
They're not discussing with or rubbing minds with the state governors?
But don't you see, 2-3 days ago, I mean, I think about a week or so ago, when the governor of Borno State ran a press interview and said, well, I believe the federal government is doing enough, but the Boko Haram is more motivated and better equipped. We saw the backlash. We saw the reaction of the government.
Isn't that can we base the entire communication between the governors of those states and the federal government with that one incident?
Not that alone. You've forgotten that a couple of months ago, the president, took a visit to Yobe and Borno State, and the Borno leaders of thought, brought their own, proposals to end Boko Haram, and you saw the way the president treated them, stopped at them and snubbed them. And this is why I say, look, whether you want to be it or not, we are at a strategic stalemate, and until we adopt some of these recommendations, we will not make any way forward. The government, federal government in particular, must be humble enough, like the late President Yaradua did. He showed a lot of humility when he tried to negotiate directly.
But this government has done that severally, asking them to come. Even the last time, you remember the president still said, well, we're still open for negotiation, we're still open to talk so that we can drop and stop all of this violence.
Mr. Lady, you see, we have to be honest with ourselves. There have been some motions of amnesty, some motions of, negotiations, some motions of, but it's not genuine. And I'll give you 2 examples. I think about 2-3 years ago, a Dr. Lai Mohammed was contacted by the Boko Haram. They said they trusted him, they believed in him. They will negotiate with government through him on condition that all throughout these negotiations, it's not made public. So the federal government that broke the faith and announced it, and they called off the talks. 2, you see, it was the same week or within a few weeks of the government setting up the amnesty committee that they declared state of emergency in Yobe, Adamawa, and Borno State. You cannot in one hand declare war on me and say I should come and talk to you. And that's why I believe that what did President Yaradua do with MEND and Niger Delta? He was very, very humble because he depoliticized and de-ethnicized the entire thing. So this is a national problem.
Are they the same thing, or are they 2 different scenarios? The Niger Delta matter and this one?
No one single insurgency is like the other, because the origins, the reasons might be different, but at the end of the day, they are one and the same. These are people who are making demands, some reasonable, some completely unreasonable.
But we're not killing people.
In Niger Delta, you must have you must be joking. You must be joking.
Did they set out, the Niger Delta militant, did they set out to kill people?
Do you know how many soldiers were killed?
No, did they set out to kill people? Because at the time, what they said was that no, it was we're just trying to draw attention to the degradation in our area by going after the oil installations. That was the statement they consistently put out.
May I ask you, when Boko Haram started, what did they start out with? They started out by saying that the government of Nigeria, fairly in the northeast, was corrupt, that government was bringing hardship to them, and that they believe that they cannot live in that government. They would rather live in a government that will provide them with, equity, fairness, and
was
justice.
it the federal government at that time or the state when they started out?
Of course, in the case of Boko Haram, it started with the state. It started in 2002 with what they call the Nigerian Taliban. Between 2002 and 2009, they were not quite radicalized. It was in 2009 when they killed some dozen police officers that the then President Yaradua ordered the first joint security operations, which left over 1,000 Boko Haram victims there, and Mohammed Yusuf, their leader, was killed, And from then, we have not recovered from the failure of that operation. You see, I don't think this is the forum for us to start saying who was right, who was wrong. No, we want to see what is the way forward.
Part of the suggestions for the way forward, one of them, I mean, over the weekend, I'm sure you must have read comments from the former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and the Sultan. Alhaji Abubakar said that there should be this government-backed civilian militia action to fight the insurgency. What do you think about that?
Look, you see, everybody would make his own suggestions, and everybody would make his own recommendation. And I think it's better. I will not understand what they mean by that. Just tell me there's no merit in it. Now, but I believe that there's a lot of merit in it, in the sense that you see, you can win the war and lose the peace. This is really the trend we are going. Now, in any war, or any insurgency like this, you must also have at the back of your mind that what you want to win is not the war but the peace. Therefore, you should also start by involving internal and local peace-making organizations. You see, a lot of people have been traumatized by this Boko Haram, insurgency. People have got raped, murdered, some have witnessed their children being slaughtered. You need to rehabilitate them. So it's not just a matter of the army. The uniformed men have not been known to bring about peace. This is why I said at the beginning that in the overall strategy, you must include political, economic, social, with the military.